This video is brought to you by my patrons.
Lucy?
No. Now look. Isn't this beautiful? Don't you think it's worth almost any amount of money?
No.
No? Well...
Price tag.
Television and comedy go hand in hand. As long as the former has been around, so has the latter. And as such, the medium has gone through significant iterations and changes throughout its history. It goes all the way back to 1947 when the show Mary Kay and Johnny aired as the first American sitcom to ever grace the airwaves. There's a bit of contention there though, as it seems that the UK beat us to the punch. But if Black Mirror taught me anything, it's that not even the Brits like the Brits. Okay, to my 7 British fans, I'm sorry for that last joke. I should never have implied that Black Mirror was worth watching, at least not past San Junipero. Anyways, it really all got started in the 1950s when television sets were new and shiny and everyone was still trying to figure out how to use them. The first sitcoms were simple and straightforward, with wholesome families and their quirky neighbors providing the bulk of the humor. And who could forget those classic laugh tracks that would surely never get old, telling us when it was time to chuckle at the dad jokes. As the years went by, the sitcom evolved and expanded to include a wider range of characters and situations. In the 1960s, we saw the birth of the workplace sitcom, with shows like The Dick Van Dyke Show and Bewitched, giving us a glimpse into the hilarious and problematic worlds of advertising and witchcraft, respectively. The late 60s through the 1970s were a time of great social change, with the Vietnam War winding down and the free love movement rising as a counterpoint. And the American sitcom reflected that. Shows like All in the Family tackled important issues like racism and sexism, while Happy Days gave us a nostalgic look at the 1950s. And let's not forget The Brady Bunch, which showed us what it was like to be a blended, but still very much white, family before it was cool.
Marsha!
Actually, my family was kind of like the Brady Bunch, except for the all-white part. And when people would ask me about them, I'd just gesture vaguely in the show's direction and say, basically like that. The 1980s brought us some of the most iconic sitcoms of all time. Who could forget The Cosby Show, with its lovable patriarch and wacky kids? What's that? He did what? Okay, cut this please. And what about Cheers, where everyone knows your name and drinks are always flowing? And let's not forget the classic fish out of water comedy, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which introduced us to the one and only Will Smith.
Oh, wow! My wife's name out your fucking mouth!
The 1990s continued this trend of reinvention. The Simpsons showed us that animation could be just as hilarious as live action. And who could forget Home Improvement, where Tim Allen proved that you can actually replace jokes with grunts. And he actually did so right into our hearts, and then right back out with all of his problematic tweets. I'm beginning to sense a pattern here. The 2000s brought us even more diverse and innovative sitcoms. The Office and Parks and Recreation took workplace comedy to new heights, and were both totally American inventions, don't Google that. While Malcolm in the Middle showed us what it was like to be a mischievous kid in a chaotic family. And let's not forget 2.5 Men, which gave us Charlie Sheen, oh god.
I'm by winning.
Point is, throughout this era and into the 2010s, the sitcom began to experiment with getting rid of the laugh tracks. Given all that, it's not hard to see that the genre has seen better days though. While there are still some multi-camera, laugh track sitcoms out there, many of them suffer from a number of problems that have contributed to the downfall of the genre in general. One of the biggest issues with the American sitcom is that it often relies on tired, predictable tropes. For example, the nagging wife, the bumbling dad, and the precocious child, always ready with a quippy one-liner.
Did I do that? Did I do that? Did I do that?
These are all common archetypes that have been overused to the point of exhaustion. BoJack Horseman absolutely skewered these tropes with the in-universe show Horsin' Around.
That's too much, man!
That's my favorite line!
I also touched on this idea in my Moral Oral video, and that it often leads to ever more exaggerated characters that eventually become completely flanderized and lose all sense of relatability that they had when the show began. These tropes can also make the characters feel one-dimensional and flat, and the storylines around them often feel stale and unoriginal. Another problem with the American sitcom is the use of the laugh track, but I know this topic has been beaten to death, so I won't really harp on it, except to say that some of these still running sitcoms, like How I Met Your Father, still use them, and as a result, even being in 4K and with a fully diverse cast, they still feel extremely outdated. A lack of diversity was for a long time a huge issue with the American sitcom, though it has been slowly ameliorated. For far too long, sitcoms relied on harmful stereotypes and tropes. For example, the nagging wife trope is often associated with controlling, overbearing women who nag their husbands incessantly. This stereotype is harmful to women and perpetuates the idea that women are overly emotional and irrational. Similarly, the portrayal of black characters as sassy and streetwise is another harmful stereotype that has been perpetuated by the sitcom genre for far too long. And to use a tired cliche of my own, while video games don't make murderers themselves, media does affect the way we see the world. In fact, that is the entire point of media, to affect us. One of the most recent shows to challenge the traditional sitcom format is Kevin Can F*** Himself. This dark comedy follows the life of Allison, a sitcom wife who realizes that she is trapped in a stereotypical sitcom world. The show subverts the classic tropes by showing the dark, messy, and often violent reality that is hidden beneath the surface. The eponymous Kevin, a privileged white male who literally walks through life like it's a sitcom, sucks the other characters into his black hole of a life, and for those portions, the show turns into a literal sitcom. Conversely, when the other characters are away from Kevin, the show turns into this gritty drama with a desaturated color palette. Through its unique approach to storytelling, Kevin Can F*** Himself highlights the problems with traditional sitcoms, including the lack of diversity and reliance on tired tropes. It challenges the audience to question their own perceptions of the genre and the harmful stereotypes that it perpetuates. I almost included it as a main topic in this video, but the video is already long enough. It is a really great show though, so you should check it out. While the sitcom is by and large dead as a genre, at least in terms of the trappings you would expect, like laugh tracks and multicam setups, it has evolved into something more. In this video, we are going to talk about two of the other approaches that showrunners have taken to evolve the tired formula. Two shows, funnily enough, that are both named after their protagonist. I'm sure this won't get confusing at all. We'll start with Ted Lasso. This show tells the story of an American football coach who gets hired to manage a struggling English football team. Now, you might be thinking, what does an American football coach know about soccer? And yeah, but what he lacks in knowledge, he makes up for in enthusiasm and positivity. Ted Lasso, the character, and the show are both the most wholesome things on television right now. Created by Bill Lawrence, Jason Sudeikis, and Brendan Hunt, Ted Lasso is the kind of show that makes you feel good and restores your faith in humanity. On the other end of the spectrum is Barry, which follows the misadventures of a hitman who decides to become an actor. Yes, you heard that right, a hitman who becomes an actor. It's the kind of premise that could have only come from the twisted minds of the creators Alec Berg and Bill Hader. Barry is a dark comedy that's not afraid to take risks and push the boundaries of what's considered funny. And yet, despite the show's dark subject matter, and let's be clear here, it gets dark. Like Midnight in a Black Hole sort of dark. It still manages to be incredibly funny. Hader's performance as Barry is both hilarious and chilling, and the supporting cast of characters is equally memorable. From Henry Winkler's narcissistic acting coach to Anthony Carrigan's scene-stealing Chechen mobster named NoHo Hank, who is easily in my top 5 favorite characters of all time. So what do these two shows have in common? Well, for starters, they represent a departure from the traditional American sitcom formula. Where sitcoms of the past focused on one-dimensional characters and predictable storylines, Ted Lasso and Barry offers something different. Ted Lasso takes a sports comedy and turns it on its head with its earnest message of kindness, while Barry takes the hitman genre and injects it with dark humor and pathos. Now, I'm going to stop right here for a second and address the elephant in the room. You're probably thinking, hey Mero, Ted Lasso and Barry are not sitcoms, but I would argue that they are, or at least they're what evolved from what we all knew as a sitcom. They're television shows telling fictional stories which are generally comedic in nature. They are situational comedies. The rest is just set dressing. So I think it's fair to evaluate them under the same lens, at least on some of their aspects anyways. Feel free to disagree in the comments, just, please don't be a dick to anyone about it. Overall, Ted Lasso and Barry represent two distinct, yet equally impressive evolutions of the American sitcom, with Ted Lasso emphasizing heartwarming character development and positive messages, while Barry explores dark and complex themes through its unique blend of horror and drama, both ultimately showcasing the limitless potential of the sitcom genre. I should add that there will be minor spoilers going forward, so please go check out the shows first if you haven't already. Also, I swear to God, I am not sponsored by Apple. I just happen to like some of their shows. Ted Lasso, the character, not the show, is not your typical sports comedy hero. He's not a brash, cocky alpha male who talks tough and takes no prisoners. Instead, he's a kind, compassionate, and optimistic individual who generally cares about his players and the people around them. He's the kind of guy that you just want to sit down and have a beer and a chat with, and that's what makes him so endearing.
If that's a joke, I love it. If not, I cannot wait to unpack that with you.
From the very first episode, we see that Ted is not just a coach, but also a mentor, a friend, and a confidant to his players. And while it may come off as patronizing or fake at first, we quickly find that everything he does is out of genuine kindness. He takes the time to get to know each of the players on a personal level. He listens to their problems, offers them advice, and encourages them to be the best versions of themselves.
It's a goldfish. You know why?
No.
Got a 10-second memory. Be a goldfish, Sam.
But it's not just his players that Ted develops a close relationship with. He also forms a deep bond with Rebecca, the team's owner, despite the fact that she initially hired him to fail. Through his unwavering positivity and infectious charm, Ted slowly wins her over, and they eventually become close friends. One of the key aspects of Ted's character development is his ability to remain positive and upbeat in the face of adversity. Whether it's dealing with a 7-game tie streak, or navigating a personal situation, or facing opposition from his own team, Ted always maintains his sunny disposition, which is a stark contrast to the tough guy, toxic stereotype that's often celebrated in sports comedies. He encourages his players to talk to him about their problems and is always there to lend an ear or offer a kind word. Of course, Ted is not without flaws. He has a tendency to avoid conflict, which can sometimes cause problems down the line, even to his own mental health. He also struggles with homesickness, as he's far away from his family and friends back in the States. But even these flaws serve to make him more relatable and human. Ultimately, Ted Lasso's character development is a testament to the power of kindness and empathy and human connection. Through his interactions with his players, Rebecca, and the people of Richmond, Ted teaches us that even in the face of adversity, there's always a way to stay positive and make a difference in the world. But it's not just Ted. One of the most delightful aspects of the show is its ensemble cast of characters, each with their own unique quirks and flaws. From the lovable but bumbling equipment manager Nate to the snarky but brilliant sports psychologist Dr. Sharon, the show is packed full of memorable personalities. One of the standout characters is Roy Kent, the aging team captain who's seen it all and has the bum knee to prove it. He is gruff, he cusses a lot, and is initially dismissive of Ted's coaching style. Basically a dick. Or so it seems.
Uncle Roy, can we get ice cream?
Fuck no. Sorry. F no.
Over time, though, we see that there's more to Roy than meets the eye. He's dealing with the physical toll of his years on the field, as well as the knowledge that his time in the game is coming to an end. Through his interactions with Ted and his teammates, we see him grow and evolve as a person and begin to open up and show us that he isn't this overly machismo, toxic personality that we thought at the beginning. Then there's Keely, the team's social media manager who quickly becomes a standout. She is witty, confident, and unafraid to speak her mind, but she's also vulnerable, as we see in her second season relationship with Roy. Her character is a great example of how Ted Lasso manages to balance humor and heart in equal measure. Really, all of the characters on the show are multidimensional. In fact, I challenge you to find one appearing on screen that isn't. What really sets Ted Lasso's ensemble cast apart is the way they interact with each other. They're not just a group of disparate individuals thrown together for the sake of plot. They're a family, a team, and they genuinely care about each other. We see this in the way they support each other through tough times, celebrate each other's successes, and just goof around together. Whether it's giving Sam a haircut for a date,
So do we all just stand here?
Shut the fuck up, Janmas.
Or exorcising a curse from the trainer's room.
I was 9 when I got scouted by Sunderland, and I'd never left London before. My granddad drove me all the way there, and it was freezing, and I was terrified. I was fucking 9. Say something.
They do everything together, and it's just nice to see. It's rare to see a comedy series with so many complex and empathetic characters, especially in a genre like sports comedy, where character development is often an afterthought. But Ted Lasso manages to create a world where every character feels fully realized and deserving of our attention. It's a testament to the show's writing and the incredible performances of its cast. And by promoting vulnerability and inclusivity, the show is sending a powerful message about what it means to be a man in today's world. It's a message that's sorely needed in a culture that often values toughness and stoicism over emotional intelligence and openness. Barry also has a wide cast of complex characters, all of whom undergo significant transformations over the course of the show's 3 seasons so far. From Barry himself to his acting teacher, Gene Cousineau? I always forget how it's pronounced. Even the mobsters like NoHo Hank and Cristobal all have a chance to evolve and change in unexpected ways. At the center of the show is Barry Berkman, a former Marine turned hitman who finds a new purpose in life after discovering the art of acting. Barry's evolution over the course of the series is probably the most dramatic. At the start, he is a cold and emotionless killer, but as he becomes more involved in the world of acting, he starts to develop a greater sense of empathy and compassion, while still being a cold and emotionless killer. As Barry becomes more invested in his new life as an actor, he also starts to develop relationships with the people around him. One of the most significant of these relationships is with his acting teacher, Gene, played by the great Henry Winkler. The Fawn still has it.
I took a trip on a sailing ship, and when I reached Jamaica, I made a...
Gene is, let's say, a colorful and eccentric character who becomes a mentor and father figure to Barry over the course of the first season, until Barry commits just a teeny oopsie-doopsie murder and Gene finds out. After that, Gene's character progression is more like a regression, not in terms of depth, rather in terms of his mental well-being. We see Gene bend under the weight of grieving a loved one, coupled with the monstrous truth that the culprit is someone he is so close to. Another character who undergoes a significant transformation over the course of the series is NoHo Hank, a Chechen mobster that Barry does the very odd job for, and definitely one of my top 3 characters of all time. Hank initially seems like a one-dimensional thug, but as the series progresses, we learn that he is a complex and vulnerable character himself, who's struggling to find his place in the world. That of a gay mob boss in a world that is filled with machismo personalities. This actually wasn't planned. NoHo Hank was supposed to die in the pilot, but Bill Hader and the rest of the creative team enjoyed Anthony Carrigan's performance so much that they kept him in. One of the funniest moments involving Hank, my #1 favorite character ever, comes when he is writing a letter to the Chechen mafia back home, telling them all about how he, without authorization, allied them with the Bolivian mafia.
It is like yin and yang, meant to be, peace and pod.
Just like Gene, and basically everyone else close to Barry, NoHo Hank is made to suffer as the series progresses. While his incompetence is often the cause of his misadventures, Barry's actions either directly or indirectly hurt Hank too. I want to point out that the idea of bringing a goofy character like NoHo Hank down and causing such a change in his tone, which we later see in the series, is such an effective way to show the relative depths that Barry has sunk to. All of this is supposedly off-limits territory as far as traditional comedy shows go. Sitcoms of eras past would never have explored such depths of misery. Outside rare occurrences, the closest they'd get was a 2-episode special event where a close friend or a pet passes. Then right back to the status quo as if nothing has happened. I've said it before, but that was just kind of the reality of broadcast television. Serialization was just not really a thing in comedy shows, as the showrunners wanted the viewer to be able to jump in at any point and not feel like they had missed out because they couldn't watch TV every 7:30 on a Tuesday, or whatever. However, serialization is the bread and butter of streaming services. Ted Lasso, Barry, and many others have benefited from this immensely. By telling a larger story over multiple episodes, writers are able to build tension, deepen character development, and keep audience engaged week after week, or if you're not on Hulu, hour after hour after hour after hour. One of the best things about Ted Lasso's serialized storytelling is the way it balances ongoing story arcs with self-contained episodes. Each episode has its own unique story and theme, but it's always tied into the larger narrative of the season. For example, in the first season, we see the ongoing story of Ted Lasso trying to turn around the struggling AFC Richmond football team, while also dealing with personal issues in his own life. But within each episode, there are smaller, standalone stories that explore relationships and struggles of individual characters, like Ted's budding friendship with Keely Jones, or Roy Kent grappling with his own age and status on the team. This approach allows the show to explore a wide range of themes and emotions, from the silly and absurd to the heartfelt and emotional. One episode might be focused on the team dealing with a ridiculous scandal, while another might be focused on a character struggling with mental health issues. But through it all, the show maintains a consistent tone and style, making each episode feel like a satisfying piece of a larger puzzle. The second season puts quite a bit of focus on Sam, one of the Richmond players who is coming into his own as a man and a professional athlete. We see Sam fight against corruption in his home country of Nigeria, which is caused by the team's biggest sponsor. Before the events of the show, his protest likely would have been a solo act, if it happened at all. But because of the culture and camaraderie that Ted and the coaches had built at AFC Richmond in that first season, the entire team joined in solidarity, as a family. Of course, one of the biggest reasons why the serialized approach works so well in Ted Lasso is because of the characters themselves. The show's ensemble cast is full of lovable and relatable characters, each with their own unique struggles and personalities. By following these characters over the course of multiple episodes, the show is able to give them the time and space they need to grow and evolve. Yet it also doesn't linger or stagnate, thanks to the pace required of a show with 10 to 12 episodes per season, versus the 22 or more of a traditional sitcom. It's also a show that tackles a wide range of issues with humor, heart, and a healthy dose of absurdity, from mental health to cultural differences.
Well,
You know, I always figured that tea was just gonna taste like hot brown water. And you know what? I was right. Yeah, it's horrible. No, thank you.
welcome to England.
The show isn't afraid to delve into complex and sensitive topics, all while keeping the signature upbeat tone. One of the show's standout themes is mental health. Throughout the series, we see characters struggle with depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. But the show handles these issues with care and sensitivity, using humor to diffuse tense situations and show the characters' resilience and, when appropriate, giving these ideas the space to land. One such example is Ted's ongoing battle with panic attacks due to the many points of stress on him. In one pretty chilling scene, Ted winds up in the team's therapist office, curled up into a ball, vulnerable and serious like we have never seen him before in the show. And it's because of the show's normally constant levity and positivity that this moment is really able to impact us. Although, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the show has one of the funniest cut-to-intro song moments in all of television. The same team therapist, Dr. Fieldstone, gets into what appears at the moment to be a fatal car crash while riding her bike to work. The camera hovers soberly over the wreckage for a moment, and then... Bit of a tone problem there. Ted Lasso also tackles cultural differences, acceptance and inclusion. With an American coach trying to navigate the world of British football, there are plenty of opportunities for misunderstandings and miscommunications.
Hold on now. If I were to get fired from my job where I'm putting cleats in the trunk of my car.
You got the boot for putting boots in the boot.
But the show doesn't shy away from these moments, instead using them to highlight the quirks and differences between the two cultures. Whether it's Ted's relationship to tea, or lack thereof, or the players being confused by his American idioms.
Be a goldfish, Sam. Yeah?
The show finds humor in these moments, while also showing the characters learning from each other and growing closer. The show also tackles issues related to gender, particularly through the character of Roy Kent. As we said, Roy is this gruff and tough former football player in Season 2 who's struggling to find his place in the world after retirement, But as the show goes on, we see a softer side of him. We see him open up, particularly in his relationship with his niece, Phoebe. We see Roy struggle to change from a cussing, intimidating footballer to that of a surrogate father. Yet he still doesn't lose himself in the process. His character is a shining example of an individual that rejects the toxicity so commonly coupled with manhood and embraces his vulnerability, all while being undeniably masculine.
Iconic. Yeah.
I never know how to react when a grown man does the carton in front of me.
In the end, what makes Ted Lasso's approach to tackling these issues so effective is its balance of humor and heart. By using humor to explore complex and sensitive topics, the show is able to make these issues more accessible and relatable to audiences, while also showing the characters' resilience and strength. It's a formula that works, and it's a big reason why the show has become such a beloved hit. Barry, on the other hand, is a show that defies easy categorization. On the surface, it's a dark comedy about a hitman trying to break free from his life of violence. But as the show goes on, it becomes clear that it's also a character study, a commentary on Hollywood, and a meditation on the nature of morality. In other words, it's a genre-blending tour de force, and that's one of the reasons why the show is so compelling and unique. It takes basically the opposite approach to that of Ted Lasso, opting to use its normally serious, dour tone to really let the funny bits land more effectively.
Fell off the roof when I was a kid. Kaplunk. Or the next day when he went right back up on that roof.
Hi, Dad.
It wears all of these masks and switches between them pretty seamlessly. Often, the show is a crime thriller. With its dark and violent subject matter, the show certainly has all the trappings of a classic noir. But what sets it apart is the humor. Whether it's Barry's deadpan delivery or the absurdity of some of the situations he finds himself in, for instance, listening to his acting friend Sally vent her issues while in a sniper nest, waiting to take the shot. The show always finds a way to inject levity even in the most tense and violent moments. It's a delicate balancing act, but the show pulls it off with aplomb.
Well, for fuck's sake, this fucking guy, can someone please shut him up?
Barry himself is complex and multi-layered, and the show spends a lot of time exploring his motivations and inner conflicts. As the show progresses, Barry's mental state and the lives of those around him get worse and worse. And Season 3 shows us one of the scariest moments in the entire show, and it doesn't even involve any blood.
We are not saying the same thing! We are not saying the same thing! If I don't do this, I don't live! I have to do this to fucking live!
At this point in the story, Barry has deteriorated to not even being able to control himself in public. As discussed, each of the supporting characters have their own inner lives and dramas, and they all tie very neatly back into the main plot. For example, while NoHo Hank and Cristobal's not-so-secret relationship gives us insight into the character and provides for some pretty hilarious moments, it also causes drama that leaks out and affects both Barry and the overall narrative. Just as often, the show is a straight-up drama. Whether it's Barry grappling with the morality of his profession or his budding romance with the actress Sally, or her relationship to him, the show isn't afraid to tackle serious issues with intelligence and sensitivity. Case in point, we see the toll that Barry's freakout has on Sally's mental health, how his emotional distance affected their relationship, and how terrified she becomes of the person she is supposed to love. More often than not, verbal freakouts like the one Barry had are just a precursor for the physical violence to come. Finally, the show is also a commentary on Hollywood and the entertainment industry at large. From the acting classes to the audition process, the show pokes fun at the absurdity and pretensions of the industry while also exploring the toll that it takes on its participants. It's a cutting critique that's both funny and insightful, and it adds yet another layer to the show's already impressive depth.
Stepping away from the class is in itself a lesson. So that there are no rain checks, is my point.
The show teaches us what it's like to be an aspiring actor in Hollywood and how easily the industry can chew you up and spit you out. But just as easily, it can grant your every dream for absolutely no reason other than your jawline. Barry doesn't fit neatly into any one genre, but that's exactly what makes it so interesting and engaging. By blending comedy, drama, crime, and commentary, the show creates a viewing experience that's truly unique and unforgettable. It's a show that proves that sometimes the best way to tell a story is to ignore the conventions and create something entirely new. Being a show about a hitman, Barry explores the nature of violence. As a hitman, Barry is obviously no stranger to violence, but the show doesn't shy away from the consequences of his actions. Instead, it examines the toll that violence takes on both the perpetrator and the victim. Through Barry's struggles with guilt and his interactions with characters like the Chechen gangsters and the Detective Loach and Sally, the show questions the morality of violence and its role in society. Barry is a character who is constantly struggling with his sense of self. Is he a killer or an actor? Both, usually. Can he ever truly escape his past? Not at the rate he's going, but these are the types of questions that the show is constantly asking, the types of issues that the characters are constantly struggling with. We occasionally see flashbacks to his time in Afghanistan and how he was later recruited by Fuchs to be a hitman. We see him struggle with some pretty gnarly PTSD from both the war and his activities afterwards. These are deep and existential questions that the show explores with a surprising amount of depth and complexity for something that is ostensibly a comedy. The show also touches on issues of power and control, whether it's the power dynamics between Barry and his handler Fuchs, or the struggles for control within the Chechen and Bolivian gangs. The show is interested in examining the ways in which power can corrupt and manipulate. Fuchs, in particular, is an interesting character. He manages to stay basically in control of someone that is effectively a walking weapon, an unstable one at that, and does so through manipulation, which the show takes great care to set up. Multiple times throughout the series, Barry tries to leave Fuchs, but every time winds up right back where he started. For example, after the season 1 finale, we spend quite a bit of time with Fuchs following Barry's evidence trail and finding the dirt that forced Barry back into his grip. Finally, Barry explores the idea of redemption. Can someone who has done terrible things ever truly make amends? This is a question that the show grapples with as Barry tries to extricate himself from his life of violence to make a new start. Barry doesn't offer any easy answers, but it does explore the idea of redemption with a refreshing honesty and nuance that we really don't see many places. Each time Barry tries to leave his life of killing behind, he is dragged right back into it. He expects to just make a clean break and pretend like none of it ever happened, but the show pretty explicitly says that's not gonna happen, Chief. Becoming a good person isn't like flipping a switch. In fact, the idea of a quote-unquote good person is part of the problem. It's about actions, making reparations, and facing up to the mistakes that he's made. Season 3 is the latest season thus far, and by far the darkest, but I have a feeling that Season 4 will get worse. So far, every setback has just made Barry retreat further into himself, making him more and more unstable. It seems like there is only one end to his character. In the end, what makes Barry's exploration of these themes so effective is its willingness to take them seriously while also injecting plenty of humor and levity. The show never feels preachy or heavy-handed, but it also never shies away from the weighty issues that it's tackling. It's a delicate balancing act, and the show pulls it off. The result is a show that's both thought-provoking and hilarious. The sitcom, as it was once known, is all but dead, but its spirit lives on in shows like Barry and Ted Lasso. The versatility of such shows gives us insight into the boundless possibilities for the comedy genre. In fact, they give rise to the question, what even is genre? These shows are on such diverging paths in their exploration of the boundaries of the medium, but each of them arrives at a pretty excellent balance in the process. For Barry, genre blending is a way to deconstruct the conventions of comedy and subvert audience expectations. For example, the show uses its crime elements to comment on the nature of violence and the morality of killing. It is still a comedy, but as mentioned, it pulls off the balancing act by punctuating the often exceedingly dark moments with bits of humor. Ted Lasso, on the other hand, uses genre blending to create a unique tone that balances humor with heart, while exploring themes such as redemption, forgiveness, and the power of optimism. Both Ted the character and the show as a whole share a peppy, positive tone throughout, and only in choice moments punctuate that tone with more serious beats. Each approach, while different, is equally valid, as they both allow for a contrast that really didn't exist before, certainly not in such a potent mixture. Their approach to the protagonists couldn't be more different, which makes sense given the wide gulf that separates their subject matter. Barry is built around a complex and morally ambiguous protagonist who undergoes a significant transformation over the course of the series. The show challenges the audience to question their own moral compass as they root for a character who is, at his core, a killer. In contrast, Ted Lasso is built around a likable and optimistic protagonist who remains consistent throughout the series. The show's focus on character relationships and personal growth is more about the supporting characters than the titular ones, who each act as a source of inspiration for others, or whatever Barry does. The key takeaway is that rather than letting the arbitrary guidelines of genre confine storytelling and selling off the same old show in a package that everyone is familiar and comfortable with, both shows allowed their stories to dictate their form. Ted Lasso, with its heartfelt storytelling, has redefined what a sitcom can be, combining comedy and drama in a way that feels fresh and genuine. The show's focus on character development and emotional authenticity has set a new standard for the genre, challenging other shows to follow suit. Similarly, the various masks that Barry, the show, wears has pushed those boundaries even further. The show's explorations of darker themes and complex characters has helped to break down the tired tropes that have become so prevalent in the genre. Together, Ted Lasso and Barry, along with other shows like them, have proven that the sitcom can still be relevant and engaging, even in an era of peak Golden Age TV. By challenging traditional storytelling approaches and bringing fresh perspectives to the genre, these shows have shown that there's still room for innovation and creativity in the sitcom landscape. So, did you enjoy the video? Are you looking down at the timecode and wondering why there's still so much of it left? Well, it's not just another ad spot or an end card, it's actually something relevant, so don't click away just yet. I pulled a bit of a fast one on you all. This was secretly also a video about the benefits and dangers of AI. Woohoo! See, the script itself was actually written by an AI, ChatGPT to be exact. Well, that's not exactly accurate. I'd say 70 to 80% was actually written by the AI, with some pretty heavy editing of that portion to get it more into my voice, and to get rid of the repetition. Seriously, ChatGPT repeats itself more than a drunk cousin cornering you on Thanksgiving to tell you about this sick new Ethereum investment that you can totally get in on, bro. The other 20 to 30% of the script were addendums and details that I wanted in there and that the AI left out, like the Ted Lasso intro tone problem. Yikes. Additionally, a not insubstantial amount of it was just wrong? It came up with multiple scenes as examples to prove its point, and in basically all of those cases, the events described just didn't happen. Like this gem, for instance.
One of the funniest moments involving NoHo Hank comes in the second season when he and Barry are sent to take out a Bolivian drug lord. The mission quickly devolves into chaos, with Hank and Barry fighting off dozens of armed guards in a hilarious and over-the-top action sequence. The scene is both thrilling and absurd, and it showcases the evolution of Hank's character from a one-note villain to a more fully realized human being.
I was able to catch this and others like it and replace them or just edit them out entirely, but only because I had watched both shows multiple times in preparation for this video. A YouTube video is pretty low stakes, but imagine if you were trying to use ChatGPT for something actually important. Now, I want to be absolutely crystal clear. This wasn't all just a trick or something. I really do want to talk about these two shows. I also wanted to show people what the current iteration of this AI is capable of and why it's equal parts interesting and unsettling. And anyways, ChatGPT basically said exactly what I was going to say, especially after I took it out back with a baseball bat, which basically just means editing nearly every sentence to fit. I created an outline of the essay I wanted to make and fed those individual section prompts into the website to fill it out. What's important though is that everything said in this video were things that I really do believe, and before trying this, I already wrote most of the script myself, so please don't feel like you were cheated because that was not the intent that went into this work. I merely wanted to prove a point. You've probably already heard of ChatGPT by now. Hell, you've probably even used it, maybe just to write erotic fiction about your friends to make them laugh uncomfortably, which is totally not a specific thing that I did. Or maybe you just used it to get out of writing that World Lit essay, or to fill out those short answer questions for your chemistry class. Though, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that there are websites and programs that can deduce, within a certain margin of error, if a paper was written by an AI. Honestly though, it's not even that hard to tell with the naked eye if you know what to look for. Still, there's no denying that it is a powerful tool. The same goes for DALL-E, Midjourney, and other platforms like them. This ties into what I said in my last video. These are all forms of automation, and they are getting exponentially more complex and capable as time goes on. Sure, right now, ChatGPT may not be able to write an essay that can fool a professor or YouTuber that's paying attention, but it's pretty damn close. Similarly, DALL-E may just be an artwork plagiarism master at this point in time, but that doesn't mean that will always be the case. These models get better with time. They learn as they are used more, and their engineers are constantly working on the next big thing. And these are creative fields. These were supposed to be the last bastions of human innovation. As other vocations are taken over by our new robot overlords, these expressions of the human condition were supposed to be safe. Clearly, that's not the case. And if that's true, then you can be damn sure that other fields aren't any safer. Machine learning is near boundless in its capacity to replicate nearly anything a human can do. All it needs is the right training data, time, and a proper physical form that's capable of interacting with the world. The field is moving so quickly that just before filming, I was notified about a paper released by the researchers at OpenAI, the people that made ChatGPT and DALL-E. They are claiming that their latest version of the language model, GPT-4, is showing sparks of AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. To be clear, true AGI would be something akin to human intelligence. Now, we're not seeing anything close to Megan or anything like that. A robot that sophisticated isn't really needed to replace human workers anyways. And this paper is still very new. It could be nothing more than the AI being advanced enough to fool the researchers, but not necessarily true AGI. Even the White House has seen AI as a concern to workers. They put out a 55-page report titled The Impact of Artificial Intelligence on the Future of Workforces in the European Union and the United States. While they are bullish on the prospect of AI to add value to the economy as a whole, even they admit to some of the negative consequences on actual working people for its implementation. In their conclusion, they state,
huge swaths of the workforce are likely to be exposed to AI, in the sense that AI can now address non-routine tasks, including tasks in high-skilled jobs that, until now, had never been threatened by any kind of automation. The primary risk of AI to the workforce is in the general disruption it is likely to cause to workers, whether they find that their jobs are newly automated or that their job design has fundamentally changed.
They go on to mention something that I hadn't even considered in writing this.
The additional risk of AI is that it may lead firms, unintentionally or not, to violate existing laws about bias, fraud, or antitrust, exposing themselves to legal or financial risk, and inflicting economic harm on workers and consumers. Given the black box nature of these systems, detecting and addressing these violations is far from a simple task.
Possibly the most horrifying thing that the paper discusses is a case study where they look at companies that are currently outsourcing nearly the entire hiring process to AI, and with very little reserve for the possible issues. Basically, a single waffling line near the end. Particularly concerning is this little nugget.
The hiring manager can turn to chatbots to screen the initial round of applicants, an important step given the volume of applications the firm is receiving. These bots collect information on the candidates' backgrounds and experience that will be incorporated into the decision of whether to advance a candidate to the next round.
So yeah, if you've been turning up blanks on Indeed.com lately, it could be because some AI decided that you didn't fit their criteria. Could be legit, could be blatant bias. But good luck finding out though, because as previously mentioned, these things are basically black boxes. Often, with machine learning, even the engineers don't really know how the inputs connect to the outputs. The paper concludes by detailing the ways in which the US government can mitigate the negative effects on workers through policy changes. This is a great first start. However, I'm not holding my breath given how fast the industry can innovate and how volatile our currently divided government is in the US. All of this ties back to my Severance video. Go check it out if you haven't. Automation is already here, and it's only getting more sophisticated with time. The genie won't go back into the bottle. The only options left are to regulate it and provide a social safety net for those displaced by it. I don't have the solutions to that, but I believe it is important to constantly point a spotlight at these things to make it abundantly clear that the people we put in power to come up with those solutions are doing so, and keeping our best interests at heart when they do. And yes, I know AI is a much larger kaiju than the relatively tame consumer tools like ChatGPT and DALL-E. These are just the tip of the proverbial iceberg, but they are also important because they are some of the only advanced artificial intelligence that the general public can interact with. I also don't want to come off as a Luddite, as I love technology. I feel like I may not have made that clear enough in the previous video. By all means, go mess around with ChatGPT. I've read about teachers reducing their workload by using the tech to create lesson plans and worksheets for their students. Though they did have to check for errors that inevitably surfaced. I am absolutely the tech nerd in my group of friends and family. There are a myriad of different ways that tech, and AI specifically, can be utilized to make our lives easier, more healthy, and more productive. ChatGPT, DALL-E, and others are not by themselves bad things. They're just tools. They are neutral. It is only in their use by humans that they gain such characteristics. So yeah, that's the big reveal. Yes, I wanted to talk about Ted Lasso and Barry and the evolution of the sitcom. I also wanted to talk about ChatGPT and its ilk, so I combined them. Please don't spoil this for others in the comments. If you want to talk about it down there, just replace ChatGPT with something else like, I don't know, Catherine Zeta-Jones. That will confuse the hell out of everyone. I'll also link the outline I made to feed prompts to ChatGPT, as well as a script with all my original lines, the pure ChatGPT lines, and all of the edited ones differentiated, if you're interested in those sorts of things. Just do keep in mind that whenever I speak my script, it generally comes out just a tad bit different than what's written on the page. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Honestly, editing the ChatGPT output probably took longer than had I just stuck with the script that I was writing, but it was still just a lot of fun. Just another reason why it might not be a good idea to replace your own essays with the tool just yet. Just a couple quick things before I go. First of all, I'd like to thank Twopenny for becoming my latest patron. Seriously, you rock, and so do all my other patrons. It's really just a big help knowing that y'all are there supporting me. If you have the means to donate a couple of bucks a month, please consider doing so. You get to help make videos like these. I actually asked for input from some of my patrons on Discord for this video, and they helped. You also get the videos early and without ads, so that's another bonus. Also, I'd like to thank Ellie over at Making Media Matter. She provided her voice for the White House paper in the conclusion section. She just went over 1,000 subscribers and is already making excellent content. Seriously, if you like my stuff, you will love hers, so go give her some love, go get subscribed. And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, please consider doing so. Hit the like button, do all the things, share the video. All of it really helps. And with that, I will leave you guys until next time. Thank you so much. And Kevin Can Fuck Himself is just... It's hard to say that name without laughing. Titled, The Impact of Artificial Intelligence on the Future of Workforces in the...